led from the start. Every pole the winning one, and it's Winning Colors showing the way as they sprint away in the lane. Winning Colors doing it just like Kiwi Lucas said she would. And down the stretch they come. Winning Colors in front. Here comes 49er on the outside. Lucas and Stevens. It's a fighting finish. Winning Colors by a head. Wire to wire with Gary Stevens in the air.
It's Thunder Gulch, the drawing off. Thunder Gulch. Tejano run. Late run by Timber Country, but it's Thunder Gulch winning the Derby.
Cortland Simmons with you here at the CS Racing Report on Derby Day 2019. It's the 145th renewal of the Run for the Roses, and as Jack Whitaker once said, the Kentucky Derby, the volume is turned all the way up, and everything is in capital letters, and we certainly have a dandy coming up this year. A very, very interesting renewal. As we all know, Omaha Beach had to scratch. Hakal also defected with a foot abscess. So both of these horses, look for them to come back in the summer, but this still looks to be a very, very sterling and spine-tingling edition of the first leg of the Triple Crown. And then Dubai horses are getting no respect. But when you look at the tape, I actually think those horses ran pretty strongly. I think Plus K Parfait and Gray Magician are interesting horses. They seem to want to run further, but a lot of people don't really place them in there. I'm certainly not saying that I'm going to use those horses, but the upset special would be the 13 Code of Honor, the number 8 Tacitus finishing second, the number 16 Game Winner third, and then the number 2, that would be Tax finishing fourth. So that's one, that's the upset special. My scenario number 3 would be Improbable winning, beating the 14, which would be win-win-win, I would do believe. So that would be the scenario there, with number 7, the maximum security third, and then Roadster finishing fourth. Scenario number 2, and some of you folks might like my these scenarios better than my actual final pick, would be Game Winner, the 16, beating Roadster, the 17, with Improbable finishing third. That's a 1-2-3 Baffert sweep, and then Tacitus finishing fourth. That's a possibility. You could also maybe use on that one, maybe Maximum Security gets in there for fourth, and then that leaves Tacitus off the board. My final pick is kind of a multi, it's a hybrid. I think Maximum Security is going to win this. I think he'll be able to either stalk or be able to get a decent fraction, and I think even if the pace is a little faster than what it was at Gulfstream Park, I think he can finish. The way he's been training with these slow gallops, that's meant to slow him down and to maximize and improve and add more gears to the multiple weapons he already has in terms of his acceleration. I think between him and Roadster, they have the best acceleration. Improbable's right there. Game Winner looks deceptively fast. He sometimes gives you the creeps that he's going to either be passed if he makes an early move, or he's not fast enough to run down the front runners. But I think that when he jumped off that van in the first appearance he made at the Churchill track, if you had any doubts about him, or if you really thought that he's a pretty live contender, he looked that much better when he stepped on the racetrack. He looks like he's ready to go, and it'll just be interesting to see how he handles any kind of off going, because it is been bandied about that the Candy Ride bloodline is suited to handling off track. So that's one thing. The final scenario, like I said, is Maximum Security with Roadster second. Number 5, that would be Improbable finishing third once again, and then the number 2 horse, that would be Tax. I expect Tax to run well. I actually could have used him in all my exotics, and keep in mind that number 1 scenario, Maximum Security, could either easily be reversed with Roadster finishing first, Maximum Security second, and then Improbable and or Tax finishing, flip-flopping between finishing third and fourth. I expect Tax to run very, very well. I think he's going to get the right trip. He can stalk like he did in the Wood, doesn't absolutely need the lead, although he's going to be close simply because he drew the inside and the rail, and he needs to get out and establish position. So that's the one thing that you have to look at with him. I just think he's as much a candidate, he's as good a candidate to be on the improve as Tacitus is. The one thing about Tacitus is that he's done all these great things, and he's run some decent numbers, improved his buyers. But my question is even with all that Tappet and all those regal bloodlines coursing through his veins, Is he fast enough? And I'm just wondering, again, a lot of people are not looking at that slow time. It could be argued you could do the same thing with Roadster simply because he ran a 151 plus, but what was on a deeper racetrack. But again, it wouldn't be argued that there is no argument if you have two horses running similar times. It's in terms of making a case for one versus the other. You could easily just say, hey man, based on those times, those horses are maybe borderline being used underneath in the exotics. Then you might as well, in the end, if you're doing multiple wagers, you got to toss these horses because they're not fast enough. Even though their speed figures are kind of right there, which is a reason why, in particularly Tacitus is getting a lot of support and not as much buzz for Roadster for whatever reason. So it'll be interesting though as the minutes and the seconds lead up to the 145th Kentucky Derby. But those are my picks. Once again, very, very interesting. Again, a Maximum Security, I think I'd give him a little bit of an edge going in, and then with the weather, that's an extra added possible edge in this race. And keep in mind, Roadster, along with many others in this field, don't have a lot of back class in terms of off tracks, and that's going to be common when you have horses that don't really have a lot of starts under their belt, which is kind of the way the shifting sands have turned out in terms of the activity of horses going into the Derby. Not a lot of preps, not a lot of career starts. It's just the way that it is on average versus the way it used to be. So but again, I think it's interesting. I think cutting humor, now Mike Smith's on him, but even if before the rider change from Corey Lannery to Mike Smith, do you think that he's a horse of the Pletcher 2, since he drew a little bit better, that could have a chance to contend? It's just like with Improbable, maybe he stands to be the Baffert horse that fires in here because he drew a little bit better than both Game Winner and Roadster.